Maps were spread over the walls of a House committee room on the third floor of the Capitol today. The maps show the changes the state is making to its reapportionment plan passed last fall and rejected by the Justice Department 2 weeks ago. Legislators came in during the day to look at those changes. In its objection, the Justice Department said the plan drawn last fall lessened black representation in the state. These changes reportedly address those digressions by putting a black House seat back into Jefferson County that had been cut and increasing the likelihood of black representation in at least 4 House seats. One of those seats that could see a black representative is now occupied by Fort Deposit's Bill Edwards. His seat jumps from a 50% black population to 73%. Part of Edwards' proposed new black constituents come from Montgomery. In Montgomery, the changes balance out the black-white ratio, but don't change the likelihood of 2 black and 3 white House seats, and the changes don't address the Justice Department objections suggesting a predominantly black Senate seat in Montgomery. When the Justice Department reviewed these changes yesterday, they were reportedly non-committal, but indicated they would issue some unofficial assessment by the end of the week. But before the Justice Department can officially review these, the legislature must pass it and send it on to the Justice Department. And there is some question about whether the black members of the legislature will approve a plan that doesn't significantly increase the number of black House and Senate seats. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
According to Elmore County District Attorney Glenn Curley, on Sunday, 7-year-old Angela Jones and her friend, whose parents owned the dog, were walking down this driveway towards her friend's home when the bulldog suddenly attacked the Jones child. Neighbors say the girl had played with the dog on numerous occasions and that the animal had never shown vicious tendencies. Immediately after the attack, the child was rushed to St. Margaret's Hospital but was pronounced dead. Officials say she died as a result of a severed jugular vein and severe loss of blood.
Immediately upon learning of the death of the child, the decision was made that the dog of necessity must be destroyed. And yesterday afternoon late, we obtained permission from the owner of the dog to have it put to sleep, and we've instructed the veterinarian under this supervision of the sheriff, or at least the sheriff will be there, to have the dog destroyed, and is also anticipated to have an autopsy performed on the dog to see if there were any abnormalities about it.
The dog was put to sleep this afternoon here at this veterinary clinic just outside of Wetumpka. Angela Jones' funeral was held a short time later. The question of whether the attack could have been prevented is on the minds of many Elmore County residents. There's no leash law in the county now, but some people say there should be. Do you find a problem with stray animals in the county, or do you think there's no problem?
Big problem. People bringing them out of town everywhere else, throwing them out on the road, starving, dead, and getting killed. And all, I think there ought to be a law that they couldn't do that.
We have dogs, but we have them tied on chain now.
From Wetumpka, Dan Black, WSFA TV News.
He's interested in Huntington College, and he asked me to do it, and it just fits in with my trip down there to Birmingham for Charlie Boswell. So I'm just very pleased to do it.
Today's telephone interview was arranged by a personal friend of Hope's, Montgomery businessman and Huntington trustee Jim Wilson. Hope says he has a local routine he will use at the Huntington benefit, and instead of taking jabs at national political figures, as he does on most of his television specials, he'll have some comments about well-known Montgomery people, but didn't mention anyone by name in today's interview. Hope is making the Montgomery appearance to raise money for the Huntington College Scholarship Fund to enable worthy and needy students attend the school. This year's benefit will be held in the train shed behind Union Station, since all other facilities in Montgomery are booked June 4th. Workers are busy preparing the floor surface at the shed for the affair. Soil has been hauled in to level the area where tracks were, and a wooden floor will also be installed. For one night, the historic shed will become an elegant banquet facility. Tickets for the benefit banquet are $100 per person and are available at Huntington. The cost of the tickets is tax deductible. Mac Carmack, WSFA TV News.
Last month, the council approved a plan for spending about $3 million in HUD money. The plan was similar to a plan presented by Montgomery Mayor Emery Falmer, except about $223,000 was taken from a contingency fund proposed in the mayor's plan and divided among several city districts. That left a contingency fund of about $90,000, a level 1 councilman called dangerously low. Still, the plan was approved and sent off to HUD for inspection. But today, Mayor Fulmer told the council that HUD officials visited Montgomery and declared projects in Sheraton Heights, South Lawn, and Woodcrest, as well as a citywide project, ineligible for HUD money. Fulmer says he feels it would be futile to appeal the HUD decision, as HUD officials seemed certain of their appraisals. So at the end of the council meeting, Councilman Luther Oliver introduced a resolution to automatically throw all money from ineligible programs back into the contingency fund. That resolution will be considered next week. Tom Foreman, WSFA TV News. Much of the $310,000 in new expenditures in the city budget was brought about by the winter severe storms. The foul weather cost the city $95,000 additional dollars in police protection and $105,000 for additional maintenance work. But the extra expenses are well covered. The city budget was also amended to take in $310,000 in additional revenues. Meanwhile, HUD has told the city $151,000 in community projects which were to be funded by HUD aren't eligible for HUD money. Mayor Emery Fulmer told the council HUD officials recently came to Montgomery and declared projects in Sheraton Heights, South Lawn, and Woodcrest, as well as a citywide project ineligible for HUD dollars. That doesn't necessarily mean the city will lose that part of the $3 million in HUD money. Councilman Luther Oliver has introduced a resolution to transfer that money in the city plan to a contingency fund. His resolution will be considered next week. Tom Foreman, WSFA TV News.
What do farmers, policemen, underground coal miners, firefighters, and heavy construction workers have in common? All have among the most dangerous jobs in Alabama. For years, the state and federal governments have been compiling information on deaths and injuries at work. Sometimes it's very difficult to gather these statistics because not all jobs are monitored. However, state and federal labor officials agree that underground coal mining is the most dangerous job in Alabama today. Just like income tax forms, most businesses and industries must file a yearly injury, illness, and death report with the federal and state departments of labor. This doesn't mean every work-related injury, illness, and death is accounted for. Ironically, the government monitors and regulates private sector job safety much more closely than it keeps up with federal, state, and local workers. Many people only see jobs in agriculture as being plain hard work. But tomorrow night, we'll see what makes agriculture one of the most dangerous jobs in Alabama. Dennis Latham, WSFA TV News.
I got that double one,
The Justice Department objections to the reapportionment plan passed last fall were based on alleged aggressions in black representation. The changes to that plan, which were presented to the Justice Department yesterday and pasted to a House committee room wall today, reportedly addressed the Justice Department's objections. But at least one black member of the House says he's not jubilant about the proposed changes. Representative Tom Reed of Tuskegee says the members of the Black Legislative Caucus had hoped to see the House and Senate representation equal the black population of the state, which is just more than 26%. Reed said that would translate into about 25 black House seats and 8 black Senate seats. There are currently 14 black House and 3 black Senate members. Under the latest changes, blacks could expect about 4 additional seats in the House, but no changes in the Senate. The changes don't address the Justice Department's comments about creating a predominantly black Senate seat in Montgomery, a change Reed says the Black Caucus supported, but a change Montgomery Representative Larry Dixon today said might leave Montgomery County with 3 senators, and only one of which would actually live in the county.
Approximately 67% of the people who live in Montgomery County are not a member of that minority. And for the Justice Department to declare that that minority has the only guaranteed Montgomery County Senate seat does not quite seem fair to me.
The Justice Department is expected to give some unofficial assessment to the latest changes by the end of the week, and Assistant Attorney General Linda Breland says if the Justice Department appears willing to approve the changes, they'll likely go before the full legislature in a special session next week. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
Very much. I have indeed been a great supporter of Senior Citizens Program because
is the Montgomery Area Council on Office that we're just here for one.
Assist our senior citizens, and that has been one of the things that I believe in, a volunteer program whereby concerned people look out for each other. And I think this is one of the best traditions that we can possibly have. It gives me an opportunity to say to you how much we appreciate you and the years of service that you have contributed to this and other communities, how much we need you and what a treasure of talent you represent. And I hope that you will continue to provide that service and that talent to us all for many years. In honor of this day, I have a proclamation.
Asteroids, Pac-Man, Ms. Pac-Man, Missile Command, Space Invaders. These are some of the most popular video games on the market today. Games that are taken very seriously by arcade owners. At the heart of these machines are the tiny silicon chips called microprocessors. They're the brain of each game. And these brains are getting smarter and smarter.
When the video games first came out, they were very easy to beat, and of course back then you still had the pinballs. The video explosion started with Space Invader about 3.5 years ago, and Space Invader was the first video game. It had a progressive degree of difficulty to it. It was challenging to the players. beforehand, you could play a video game about 5 minutes and you can master it. Now, any video game, or the best ones, you master one phase and it goes to a higher degree of difficulty, and it takes quite a while to master one of these things now because they get increasingly difficult.
Although thousands of dollars are poured into a video arcade full of games each week, Moore says that the market is saturated with people eager to cash in on the game's popularity.
You can really get hurt in this business by buying every video that comes out, because every video doesn't make money, and a lot of videos you'll lose money on. It's very hard to determine which machine you're going to buy.
The jury deliberated for about an hour last night before they asked the court for a clarification on the difference between manslaughter and murder. Shortly after 11 o'clock, the jury was dismissed for the night and asked to resume its deliberations at 9 o'clock in the morning. The prosecution contends that Murray shot officers McCord and Tony Burks during a drug arrest. The defense contends Murray thought the two plainclothes officers were bandits and were trying to rob him. According to testimony, Officer McCord was shot during a struggle between her partner, Officer Burks, and Murray. Burks was also shot on the scene after he lost his gun in the scuffle with Murray. Officer McCord was the first female police officer in Alabama to lose her life in the line of duty. Don Phelps, WSFA TV News.
Tonight and every night this week in the 6 o'clock report, Bob Howell examines space-age technology and the fascinating world of electronics. He'll discover how electronic technology affects your day-to-day living and how it will shape your future, from satellite dishes to computer word processors to the booming business of home video games. Plus a special look at untapped areas of advancement. Don't miss Bob Howell's special report on the electronic age. Tonight and every night this week in the 6 o'clock report on TV 12.
Tonight, the capital murder trial of Paul Murray has now gone to the jury. Murray is the man charged with the January shooting death of a Montgomery police officer, Mary McCord. Don Phelps has been in the courtroom during the trial and is standing by at the Montgomery County Courthouse for this live report. Don?
Mac, the jury in the case is being asked which story it believes, the story of the defendant, Paul Murray, or that of Officer McCord's partner, Investigator Tony Burks, who was wounded by Murray in the shooting that took place on Traction Avenue. Investigator Burke says that McCord was shot while they were trying to arrest Murray for possession of drugs. Although both officers had street clothes on, they had identified themselves to Murray as the police. Murray says he thought McCord and Burks were bandits and they were trying to rob him. He says he didn't know that they were police until after he shot Burks, and he saw his badge on the back of his belt. During closing arguments, defense attorney Bill Goldbrecht told the jury they can't forget that Murray's a human just because he sold and used drugs. He also asked the jury not to disregard the issue of self-defense that has been raised in the case. District Attorney Jimmy Evans told the jury that he didn't apologize for asking for the death penalty in the case. He said Murray believes in capital murder. He showed that when Burks was on the ground with a bullet in his back, and Murray asked him, "Aren't you dead yet?" The jury has been in deliberation for a little over an hour now, and still no verdict has been reached in the case. If a guilty verdict is reached, the jury will be asked to go back into deliberations once again and to decide if Murray should be put to death in an electric chair or be given life in prison without parole. Reporting live from the Montgomery County Courthouse, Don Phelps, WSFA TV News.
Thank you, Don. Tonight, a circuit...
It was 10 years ago last Saturday that George Wallace was shot in the Laurel, Maryland shopping center. Most assumed he was dead politically. Not only did he not die politically, he is now launching a new campaign for governor. Kenley Jones reports from Montgomery.
You're gonna see a change in me.
George Wallace says his new wife, Lisa, has made a change in him, given him a new outlook on life. But still, there's something missing.
Of course, there are very few things I can do really well in a wheelchair, but one is be governor.
An assassination attempt during Wallace's 1972 presidential campaign left him paralyzed and confined to a wheelchair. But he continued to serve as governor of Alabama for 7 years, longer than the 5 years he served while he could still stand.
Send Kent Bear in. Y'all want to help us, do you?
Yes, sir. Now, Wallace is running for governor again for an unprecedented 4th term.
People today are asking me to run that said they've always been against me.
And hereby denounce and forbid.
Wallace now says that segregation, which he defended so vigorously during the 1960s, is wrong. This makes it easier now for blacks to accept him.
You spoke to us as often. I told you I was praying for you. Still praying.
Keep praying.
Why, at age 62, crippled, partially deaf, is Wallace running for political office again? He says his experience as governor can help Alabama overcome its economic recession. There is another reason. Doctors have told Wallace that paraplegics must keep busy or risk premature death.
It's good medicine to be with the people and see them and meet them, and yes, it will be good for me. Very good for me, very rewarding, making me feel that I'm spending my time doing something meaningful.
George Wallace has concluded that for him, politics is the best medicine. Now, Alabama voters will have to decide whether that same prescription of Wallace for governor is best for them. Kinley Jones, NBC News, Montgomery, Alabama.
Sheriff John Hewlett, 3 local elected officials, and 7 others met in the county commission's office around 6:30 last night. Albert Means says he saw several cars outside the courthouse and thought a public meeting was going on. He went inside the commission's office and says the sheriff told him to leave. It was a private meeting. Means claims the sheriff also told him it was a family affair and slammed the door in his face. Means later returned after telling the district attorney's office and several others about the meeting. Before going home, Means claims after he and Chief Deputy Julius Bennett exchanged words about the closed-door meeting, Bennett threatened to, quote, blow him away.
In the process, Bennett got back out of the car and came to me like nose to nose, angry, and said, if I unbuckled my gun, I would do you in, and you like leave. And then by this time, Mayor Jackson and Edmore King was coming back up and was telling me to get out of here, well, let's go home.
Sheriff Hewlett told me during a telephone interview he invited a few people to talk after hours about his upcoming re-election campaign. But Means says he was told the meeting was a strategy session to discuss William Bradley's bid for election as probate judge. Means has also asked the FBI to look into possible wrongdoings involving the sheriff's office concerning a number of unsolved murders and marijuana drug raids in Lowndes County. Kim Davis, WSFA TV News in Hayneville.
The controversy started last week when Governor James seemed surprised at the salary levels Commission Director Philip Fretwell said would bring his non-merit system employees in line with his merit system employees.
All we're asking for is to parallel the people at the Building Commission with the professional salary ranges that would be brought to bear soon by the implementation of the pay and classification plan.
But Finance Director Rex Rayner didn't like the maximum $54,000 proposed for 2 upper commission jobs.
The 85 pay range was set up for a professional civil engineer 4 who has immeasurably more responsibility placed on him than these 2 positions require.
Did the Personnel Board look into that matter? No. Well, I thought y'all recommended this.
Well, I voted for it too, but I got new evidence on the table.
You can reconsider it too. You can move to reconsider it and then get a vote now.
And because of those 2 issues, the vote to implement the salary was rescinded, and the decision was put off until next week or the week after. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
Curtis told a small Selma crowd he decided to run for the 7th Congressional District seat after making several telephone calls and trips around the district and became convinced a successful race would be possible. Carter says he considers unemployment, education, interest rates, and the federal deficit the biggest problems facing the country. He charged that Congressman Richard Shelby's vote for the Republican budget led to the most drastic cuts in public education funds in the past 30 years.
Mr. Shelby has betrayed your trust. He has sold you out. He was elected to go to Congress as a Democrat, but voting 76% of the time last year with Republican issues doesn't sound like a Democrat's voting record to me.
Carter says he wants to go to Washington so the Democratic 7th District will again have representation it deserves. Mac Carmack, WSFA TV News.
Murray was on trial for the January shooting death of police officer Mary McCord, the first female officer killed in the line of duty in Alabama. The jury began its deliberations late last night, after 2 hours adjourned, and continued this morning at 9. At 11 o'clock, the members of the jury emerged, saying they were deadlocked without a verdict. At that point, Judge William Gordon instructed them to return to the jury room and not to come back without a decision. At 12:15, the verdict was handed down. Guilty of capital murder is charged. Murray, a 37-year-old former city sanitation worker, was convicted of murdering Officer McCord as she and her partner Tony Burks were trying to arrest Murray for selling drugs. Miss McCord was shot in the chest and her partner was wounded in the back after they struggled with Murray. Burks testified that he and Miss McCord were dressed in plain clothes when Murray stopped them and tried to sell them drugs. Burks told the court that Murray shot at them when Burks tried to take a gun from him. Murray denied selling drugs and said he fired at the officers thinking they were robbers. The jury has recommended that Murray receive life without parole. Judge William Gordon could recommend the death penalty or go along with the jury's recommendation. Gordon will formally sentence Murray June 11th. From the Montgomery County Courthouse, Dan Black, WSFA TV News.
John Stewart operates a forklift at Shaw Montgomery Warehouse. He has 8 children and has been on the job since March, when the Jobs for Jobs program began.
I've been out of work for a year, and I was just lucky to get the job, and I'm just glad, to have a wonderful person like Chris to work for.
Another product of the program is Jack Golden, who's in charge of maintenance for Russell Steel.
I haven't worked any much since last July, and jobs are hard to find.
The program stresses creating jobs, and according to Director Jim Seymour, more than 100 jobs have been created and filled.
They know that the urgency of the unemployment situation here, and as a composite in Montgomery, they see that they have an opportunity to make a sacrifice, and we're talking about sacrifice in this case, in some cases, to bite the bullet and go on and create one additional job or two.
Seymour says anyone is qualified for the program, but the way to get a job is to keep active applications in the unemployment office and watch the want ads. Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News.
Some of them are iron. Yeah. Well, he said he wasn't sure. He did it call up there for the top. He dug up in 2012. Betty? Okay. Come here, Adam. Adam. Oh, that was Adam. Just let her on top.
Wait, should we seal it?
Nation. I want to congratulate all of your students here, the faculty, for education. And as that money becomes available,
Governor Patterson said we have 3,700 students that have graduated. This, along with the many, many others, that's quite a move from the approximate. Montgomery County Board of Revenue and the City of Montgomery purchased 46 acres of land.
The building commission staff is split with about 1/3 of its employees on the merit system and the other 2/3 not. The commission is recommending the salaries of the 2/3 not on the merit system be bumped up to be in line with the new salaries the merit system employees will enjoy when a reclassification plan goes into effect next week for all state employees. But Governor James and Finance Director Rex Rayner, members of the commission's board, are concerned about the pay scale ranges for an architect and contract administrator, saying the maximum $54,000 salary is too high. And Governor James acted surprised the State Personnel Board hadn't recommended the new salary figures. With those two issues unsettled, the pay increases were postponed for the second time. The board did manage to agree that the commission's director be paid the same as other James administration cabinet-level officers, $48,000, and the deputy commissioner, $4,000 less than that. One stipulation to those increases may solve the governor's problems with the other employee salaries. No commission employee can make more than the deputy director. Chris Grimshaw, WSFA TV News at the Capitol.
Growing food and producing other commodities for human needs is a job that's been around a long time, and so have the dangers. Row crop farmers not only endure the hot sun hour after hour, but also work around some of the most complicated and specialized heavy equipment ever built. In addition, they handle deadly herbicides and pesticides. Crop dusters spray crops with deadly chemicals as well, but they take an additional risk by doing it from low-flying aircraft. In Alabama's woodlands, harvesting trees also take chances. They work in remote areas miles from the nearest doctor or hospital with equipment designed to saw down even the largest tree. Here, too, specialized equipment is the rule. Processing the wood taken from the forest is done in a sawmill or paper plant. Both are filled with potential hazards. For a sawmill worker, the constant whine of a cutting blade is a reminder of what could happen if he's not careful. Nationally, in 1980, accidental deaths among agricultural workers was 61 per 100,000. Construction is another job with potential for serious injury or death. One of the most dangerous jobs is iron and steel erection. These workers, putting up steel for a TV tower, often work at heights of well over 1,000 feet, sometimes contending with heat, rain, and especially wind. 45 out of 100,000 construction workers died from accidents across the U.S. in 1980. Tomorrow, we'll see firefighters and police officers working at some of the most dangerous jobs in Alabama. Dennis Latham, WSFA TV News.
The Braves take 2 of 3 from the Expos on the road, leading 2-0 in the fourth. Dale Murphy tags loser Ray Burris for this long home run to left field. The solo shot, Dale's 12th of the year and his 37th RBI, 3-0 Braves. Montreal got one back at the bottom of the fourth, but Atlanta blew it open in the fifth. Leading 4-1 with runners on first and second, Bob Horner rips this double down the line in left. Rafael Ramirez scores from second, and Dale Murphy will come all the way around from first and beat the throw to the plate, making it 6-1 Braves. Chris Chambliss then follows with a second of his 2 RBIs, an infield hit over the pitcher's head. That scores Horner 7-1 Braves. In the seventh, Atlanta gets 2 more. Horner again with a big hit. He went 4 for 4 on the night, 3 RBIs. This single to center drove in Washington. Braves added 1 more for a 9-1 win. Ken Daly gets his first big league victory, a 3-hitter with relief help from Steve Bedrosian. Rick Pons, WSFA TV Sports. This will be the first trip to the State 4A baseball finals for Jeff Davis. The Vols have rolled to a 30-4 record in what was expected to be a rebuilding year. Only 4 starters are seniors. The 2 leading hitters, Mike Turk and Bobby Collins, are both batting over .370 and juniors. And the pitching staff with a team ERA of 1.3 is all juniors. With all this youth, ball coach Bubba Lewis was a little surprised his team made it all the way to the finals.
Well, back in February, I didn't think so. That, you know, we were young, and I just didn't think that we'd be this good. And as the season grew, we grew with it and really improved. By mid-season, I thought that we'd be in the playoffs, and I thought we'd do well.
The Vols will meet Huffman for the 4A title. The best 2 out of 3 beginning Friday in Birmingham. Other than being a great team, Lewis says he knows little about the fight.
Well, in 76, and Coach English said that this is the best pitching career they've had in 14 years. They've got a good pitcher, outstanding pitcher, signed with Mississippi State, and we just expect to have a good series with them.
What's it going to take to beat them?
We're going to have to play real good defense and put the ball in play on offense. I think we'll be all right. We've got a good pitcher also, and we're going head-to-head with them and see which team's the best.
Lewis says he's going with his ace, junior Kenny Moore, on the mound in Friday's first game. Moore is 12-1 on the year. Game 1 beginning Friday at 5 at Huffman High School. Rick Fox, WSFA TV Sports.
It's hard to imagine how creating jobs within businesses already at full staff could stimulate the economy. But Jobs for Jobs Director Jim Seymour says that's exactly what happens.
We try to explain to the firms that by creating these additional jobs, and thus far we're right at 100 jobs, it can put in as much as $900 to $1,000 back in the community. And we try to reassure these firms that if we can do this together, that this money, this disposable income that's created by these salaries will in turn come back and give their company the additional business to compensate for the additional jobs they make.
Seymour says so far more than 100 jobs have been created, with more on the way. Forklift operator John Stewart is one example. He says he was out of work for a year before he was hired on here at Shaw Montgomery Warehouse. Something new within this Jobs for Jobs program is called temporary day labor or casual labor. The Unemployment Service here will keep a special file of people who are willing to do jobs like painting or yard work. Unemployment office officials say this is the first day they've advertised the temporary labor idea, but they expect it to be very popular. Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News.
Shortly, and in fact he's going to reach retirement age in September this year, and I have discussed.
I just simply oppose placing these two.
Are there any questions about any of the remainder of these things, Dr. Rayner, in your judgment? And in case of an argument regarding some feature of the building code to resolve any differences thereof. But from what I have seen in this state, we don't let any plans on anything without an architect being hired to do that.
The technology behind satellite communications is really nothing new.
The satellites is nothing but an extension of the old microwave system we've used for years, like getting our signal from Montgomery out to Mount Carmel and Montgomery out to Grady. The only difference is that they go up to a geostationary satellite. 22,300 miles, I believe, is the distance out in space. And they go up at one frequency and convert it to another frequency and back to the Earth, and that way they can distribute it over wide areas.
At Montgomery Store Cable Headquarters, these two satellite receiving dishes pick up 16 sources on the cable, with shows like Home Box Office, Showtime, Spotlight, CNN, CBN, and so on. The process of receiving a satellite transmission is relatively simple. All you have to do is have a dish, know just where to aim it, and have the right kind of electronic receivers to convert the satellite signal into TV, sound, and pictures. And that's what happens here at Store.
You can get 24 television channels on a satellite. There's 24 transponders or microwave repeaters. The problem, it seems now, is that we run out of space to put them. They're spaced, I think, 4 degrees apart right now, and they're going to go to 3-degree spacing to cram, more or less, more satellites in the space that we can use.
In reality, we're just now on the verge of a TV programming explosion. In the near future, you may be able to get up to 600 channels on your home satellite dish.
I believe they're projecting the cost of these things to be down in the $300 or $400 range. And you'll merely put a 3-foot dish on your house somewhere, and you'll be able to receive signals originating in New York or Los Angeles or wherever. I suspect very strongly it will not be free. You will pay for this service, though.
Now, briefly, we're claiming that the members of the City Council and the members of the Industrial Development Board violated their responsibility to the people of the city to use these lands in the best interest of the people of the city of Tuskegee, and we're alleging that this was not done in this case. We're also alleging that the act in transferring the land was really beyond the authority of the Industrial Development Board and the City Council. And we're also alleging that the conveyance itself was induced by fraud on the part of Wallace & Wallace, that they represented that an oil refinery would be built on the property. That was the basis for the land being deeded over. And to date, no substantial steps have been taken to build this oil refinery, and we suspect that none are anticipated.
Security officials reiterate no burglary alarm system is foolproof. But officials say the latest, most sophisticated devices are designed to make it difficult for any would-be burglar to break in, especially the professional, whose primary objective is to steal diamonds and cash.
Only a person a half-inch in diameter can get through the door without triggering the alarm, which is hooked up to the security control box. It's the brain that controls all the sensing systems wired in every room in this house. Two top security measures include the motion detection device and carpet pads. They work this way. Move, and the motion is picked up by the device, which triggers the alarm. It's purposely installed near every area, like windows and doors. Step on the carpet where the invisible carpet pads are hooked up, and... When the alarm goes off, it takes about 18 seconds for police to know which house is being burglarized or if there's a fire. Stan Shiletsky designed the device, which he says is completely controlled by the owner.
If you want to have a door or window excluded from the system, it's just simply a matter of turning a switch into the off position. This allows a freedom of movement within the premises.
Shiletsky says $2,000 is the starting fee for the best security measures. He says a complete wiring can cost up to $50,000. Kim Davis, WSFA TV News.
And they steal cash, and they would not...
This security alarm box controls every sensing device installed. An alarm sounds even if it's tampered with. But the homeowner can become a burglar in his own house if he forgets to turn the security devices on or off.
I mean, there is always a period of time after the installation that the occupants are developing a habit. And until the turning on and off of the system becomes a totally habit sort of function, then they themselves blow the alarm. But
Shiletsky warns interested customers not to be fooled by some security businesses claiming all burglary systems are foolproof. Shiletsky says no system is perfect. He says the best systems cost from $2,000 to $50,000, and he says in the next few years, nearly every house built will include some type of security system designed to keep burglars and vandals out and keeping families inside safe. Kim Davis, WSFA TV News.
This is the notice. It's very simple. In the right-hand corner, you'll see market value, and that tells you the total property value of your residence. But this notice has nothing to do with how much tax you'll have to pay later on.
Problem is that the average homeowner is confusing market value of the property with assessed value. They think that the market value is the value on which the millage, tax millage will be applied. Now, this is not true.
Egerton says a good example is a residence valued at $50,000, but with an assessed valuation of just $5,000. Egerton says when you get your notice, you'll have to figure out your own tax payments using state and county tax mills. Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News.
On which the millage, tax millage will be applied. purpose behind sending these out is to let the taxpayer know that there is going to be a change, more than likely, in his ad valorem tax notice that will be mailed him later this year. Now, for those who think that the market value is too high, what they should do is contact their tax assessor, and they should talk with him about the market value of the property, and if for good reason they feel that it's out of line, then they should ask for a hearing before the local county board of equalization, who can lower the value if for sufficient reason.
And you're doing this because you're still under court order?
Yes, ma'am. The Department of Revenue has been under a federal court order since 1971 to equalize property values in the state of Alabama. Now, so that you will understand what we mean by equalize, let's say that
as such an abundance of natural and human resources and willing workers, it's a shame. As members of labor, education, business, and other segments of our society that are concerned with the job loss here in Alabama, to, within 90 days, band together, make a report to the governor, and in concert with the legislature, implement the necessary legislation to set about the proposals as recommended by that task force.
Camp says even though he expects the campaign to be marked by a hard-fought controversy and nose-to-nose political combat, he'll still devote the necessary time to the PSC position. He says he hopes to lead the Senate toward legislation that will bring more jobs and protect the jobs we have in Alabama. Other issues he pointed to are education, the needs of senior citizens, and organized crime. Camp says he will also try to bring about legislation to make some changes at the PSC, including the way the commission is funded.
Then the Public Service Commission should be funded out of that general fund, not directly from the utility companies like it is now. Because what you've got purely and simply is an effort here to embarrass a commission that has been tough on those companies because they've got a hold of the money and don't have to let it go.
So far, only one other candidate has announced for the lieutenant governor's race. Mac Carmack, WSFA TV News.
Subdue ourselves to those mandates and to those efforts by those companies.
When it comes to choosing a personal computer, you can spend as little as $99 for a kit that, when completed, utilizes your own cassette recorder and plugs into your home television set, or as much as $3,000 for a sophisticated personal computer with lots of added-on equipment and software. That's a term used to describe the information that controls the computer and what it can be instructed to do. Many people not familiar with computers think they're nothing more than big adding machines or sources of video games for the kids. But these computers have many different applications, including teaching youngsters at school and at home.
Personal computer is exactly that. It is the computer for every man. That means anybody can get the personal computer to use for their personal particular solutions to a business problem or home finance problems or as simple a thing as helping plan, family meals and shopping lists, and also writing educational, programs for the kids. The most common and most used programs in schools today are an electronic version of the old-fashioned flashcards. Leading publishers are really leading the way in developing good instructional courseware for schools, because they've recognized the need for children to learn how to use these tools and be familiar with them, and for schools to utilize them to better educate the kids and spend less time and money doing it, so the teachers can spend more time individually with the students. And they have programs from phonetics, spelling programs, math programs, obviously reading motivation programs, and they scan really the entire field of educational needs for schools.
Perhaps no other profession places a man or woman in such consistent danger as firefighting. Firefighters go through rigorous training that teaches how to fight a fire, administer first aid, and how to deal with any number of toxic gases given off during a fire. According to the International Association of Firefighters, most injuries occur at the site of a fire. These injuries include burns, cuts, broken bones, assaults, smoke inhalation, heat exhaustion, overexertion, heart attack, sprains, and strains. Getting to and from a fire is also sometimes hazardous. This fire truck overturned after colliding with another vehicle. Several firefighters were injured. One required hospitalization. Nationally, in 1980, the death rate for firefighters was 61 per 100,000. In the last 7 years, 48 Alabama police officers were killed in the line of duty. Whether they work for the state, county, or city, police officers know they'll be called upon to handle an almost unlimited number of dangerous tasks. Sometimes a routine call turns into a nightmare that leaves police officers seriously injured or dead. Nationwide, 27 police officers out of 100,000 were killed in the line of duty in 1980. Tomorrow, we'll look at underground coal mining, a job that's considered the most dangerous job in Alabama. Dennis Latham, WSFA TV News. This is Jim Walter Resources' number 5 coal mine near Brookwood, Alabama. It's the deepest underground coal mine in North America. Every day, hundreds of miners get on a giant elevator and descend almost 2,800 feet into darkness. With a helmet light and other safety equipment, these miners go about the job of harvesting the Earth's underground bounty of fossil fuel. This wealth of energy has not come by easily. It takes hard work and a keen attention to safety. Frederick Carr, Jim Walter's Vice President for Mine Engineering, says the system of mining can be as safe as any other system.
Because you've got hazard doesn't really mean that you are unsafe. You have to organize your system in order to be safe. And that, I think, is what we attempt to do. The bigger the hazard, of course, the better the organization and system has to be in order to overcome those hazards.
This is a continuous mine. It can dig 8 tons of coal in a matter of seconds. With the coal comes deadly methane gas. It can kill you if you breathe it, and it could kill you if it explodes. Gas levels in the mine are checked regularly by this small device. The gas is vented to the surface by a supersized air circulation system. Once the coal is removed, the roof of the shaft must be supported. To do this, roof bolts are installed by this machine. Notice it has a special shelter for the operator to stand under. This is Eddie Boyd. He says when you work a half-mile underground, you have to grin and bear it.
Well, I try not to let it bother me. You don't know the truth about it. Ain't much else you can do.
After 8 hours of noisy, dusty work, the miners get back on the giant elevator for the trip to the surface. For about 3 minutes more, the miners must endure the eternal darkness, and then the sun comes back, at least for a few hours, giving them time for a bath, a meal, and to get ready for their next shift. Dennis Latham, WSFA TV News, Brookwood, Alabama.
Beef and pork prices both shot up this month. Beef is up by 7% and pork is up by 5%. And while this upward trend in prices is bad news for consumers, Survey Coordinator Dick Fifield says it's good news for swine and beef producers because they're finally beginning to show a profit. But there is a spark of good news with all the bad for consumers. All other commodity groups are lower. Produce prices are down 4% due to the onset of local availability, and dairy prices are also down. Milk, eggs, and cheese are good buys this month. Byfield says the declining prices in poultry, dairy, and produce are a more accurate reflection of the prices farmers are receiving in these markets. He says the food prices are highest in northwest Alabama and the lowest in the northeast. Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News.
A number of state employees lined the hall outside the Personnel Board room, while inside, their representatives sharply criticized the four-member panel. Last month, the governor and a legislative oversight committee approved a plan that gives employees annual raises based on recommendations from their department heads. Under the plan, workers could receive, depending upon job performance, up to a 4-step or 10% annual raise, in addition to the 11% pay hike recently approved by the legislature. But during the board's April meeting, the members voted to take 6 to 9 months to revise their annual service evaluation forms and defer implementation of the new pay hike scale during that time. They also decided to limit other step increases to 1 to 2.5 steps during the evaluation period. These decisions enraged employee representatives.
That you proceed to presume to have the authority to change anything that the legislative body and the governor had approved. Now, for you to raise the price,
representatives say the board's action, which hasn't been adopted, will affect all
administrators of the various state agencies who must have had the good sense to do the job, or the governor never would have appointed them.
Representatives say those employees haven't been considered for a raise in over a year. Personnel Board Chairman Edward Dixon called today's hearing a fact-finding gathering and promised to identify all situations that could be unfair to state employees. Kim Davis, WSFA TV News.
Our President Bob Cook concerning this.
thank you for inviting me to be with you, and thank you for presenting me to this fine group of supporters of yours, and I hope to see some of you tomorrow. God bless you, honey. You're great. You're great.
Increased prices is nothing new. This is the second consecutive month they've gone up. The market basket consists of 20 basic food items, priced every month in the same grocery stores in the same areas of the state. The average price for the food basket this month is $27.29, up from $26.66 last month. The Bureau says that's the second highest increase this year. Beef and pork prices are leading the way this month. Beef is up 7% and pork is up 5%. But you can find a good deal at the dairy counter or in produce. Survey coordinator Dick Fifield says produce prices are down due to local availability. Gina Gregory, WSFA TV News.